Push Fed Podcast in full effect. These guys, we have our returning guests. We have Damian, Tavares, and we have Garrett Smalls in the building. We are here right back for our real estate, episode 2, part 2. Part two. I mean, I'm glad these guys were able to come back from their busy schedules. I mean, Dame's over here being a doctor, trying to save lives and shit. And then we have our top sale, one of the youngest top sales on his squad. Like, you got an award for that, right? Last time, right?
Yeah, back in February, man. But I need another one coming up.
Oh, so. You're getting another one?
No, I need another one.
Okay. So how does that work?
I just need to outsell everybody again.
Okay, bet. Okay, bet. All right, so we're just gonna kick it off like this. Like, basically, we had some fan questions. We'll get into that later on in the show. They had some questions for each of y'all individually. We'll just get into that later. And so we kind of left off on, like, you guys were dropping a lot of great gems. I don't know where we really left off, but I know what we didn't cover. So we'll just start off with basically for you, Dame. How do you kind of structure your deals? Like, when you starting off with your deals, how do you kind of like structure them? Like, what, like, let me get a little bit more specific. So when you're talking to an as-is seller, they want to sell it to you. How do you go about like starting your deals off?
So for me, and I think anybody that like wants to be successful in real estate, not just maybe get their foot in, that may be a different answer. But if you really want to like take it to the highest level it can be, I try to gear myself towards anything that the seller needs, right? So some people need a quick cash purchase. Some people want, some type of terms, longer extended terms over time. They end up getting more money. Mm-hmm. So like the way that I structure the deal is to meet the seller's needs, or to meet the situation's needs if it's not like just the seller, but just to make sure that I'm prepared. I got a couple different options. I'm sure we're going to go over them. Mm-hmm. That I try to be prepared for when it comes to investing and when it comes to acquiring properties. And that's the first way you got to structure it, how you can meet someone else's needs. And then the other part, of course, is how you can maximize your profit. Mm-hmm. So those two combined is how I start off.
And then you guys can probably both touch on this, but a lot of people, when you're selling to someone, and when you're trying to pitch to someone or however you're starting off, a lot of people, I know I had trouble in overcoming objections. So like, what kind of some tips in like overcoming objections? And like, he touched on like some things. He touched on some things last time when you kind of have to have like tough skin in this business. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to handle the no, but kind of go around it to still get to the greater goal. So what is some things like about overcoming objections that you guys kind of have?
Yeah, it's a good question. So actually, someone posted on the real estate Facebook group that was on Facebook about her question was, how do you handle being told no? Mm-hmm. And she was like, I'm having a tough time with a rejection. Getting told no, it shuts me down. And one of the best comments I saw on there was, get told no 1,000 times. You know what I mean? You're going to get told no. Look for no. If anything, in my opinion, of course, handling objections is one thing, but the client being honest, rejecting you up front might save you a lot of time. I know there's some clients that I've spent 6 months trying to follow up with just to find out that they did not need my service or have went another route. That's 6 months that, I'm never getting back of, I probably spent a minute or so here and there making that phone call. But, you're going to get told no all the time. The faster you accept it, the quicker you can move straight onto that next door, that next client, that next deal. And handling objections, you're going to get better with the more more you go through. You're going to get so many different scenarios and problems that people are having, and the more of those you get, you're going to start finding your way of handling that same issue over and over and over and over, because at some point they all connect. Mm-hmm. So.
What do you feel, Dave?
Yeah, at the end you kind of were like leaning towards what I was going to say. Definitely pay attention to what works. When it comes to objections, it does take experience. Of course, there's like scripts and stuff that I go over with anybody that, I'm partnering with or that, I'm on the phones working with and stuff like that. So there is like a form of guideline that you could follow that usually works. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to objections, for me, it's like knowing what works and what doesn't, being as personable as you can be, not sounding like a robot or anything. And then also just knowing like sales and negotiations. Mm-hmm. I've read a couple books. I've done plenty of sales training. I think people forget that portion. You know, they're like, oh, I want to be in real estate or I want to buy real estate. It's a sale. You know what I mean? It's a two-way sale. So if you really want to be good at it, study negotiations, study the sales process, study sales in general. Because at the end of the day, you are selling something, whether it's your service like Garrett does, or it's yourself, or if you're just selling your ability to buy the house. You know what I mean? You're selling it. So that's what I really focused on when I wanted to be good at objections. I just try to be like the best salesperson I could be. So, and most people think you only need to study sales if you're selling cars or nothing, but that's not the case at all. Mm-hmm. If you want to be good at like investing or buying houses, you need to study sales the same way, because most of your interactions will be like a sales experience.
And do you have like a certain example that you could like give to the people that like that you were in a place where the seller has told you no, but you found a way to overcome that?
I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Well, for the most part, they tell you no about the price, right? And then in that element, you need to figure out what their why is, what they're really looking for in the experience, you know, why they told you no, and what their reasoning was. And then on top of that, you need to make sure that you're staying in a certain frame and a certain point of negotiation. I mean, that's like a full podcast itself, you know what I mean? But that's the most basic example. It's just the person, they tell you no most of the time. You rarely get that yes on the price the first time. And then on top of that, some people just tell you no as far as just dealing with you, because they say, oh, you're an investor, you're going to lowball me. No, right? And then easy objection for that is, no, I follow regular, normal market value. I offer the best price I can offer, and I keep it fair. I'm a fair person. You seem like a fair person as well. We can both see if this works out for both of us. If not, we can go our separate ways. It's kind of like the push-pull method. Like it's all related. And you get no's all the time, and there's always like a good objection for it. It doesn't always work, but you know what I mean, there's always something.
I feel comfortable just for you saying that too.
Yeah.
I want to sell you my house now, Damian. I feel bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, just being involved, you know, too. You know,
Right.
And, one thing, especially like with learning real estate, the classes teach you nothing. You get through real estate school, you're not going to go out there knowing anything about the business. Just being involved, you know, you're going out there and getting rejected, you're going to start learning your ways around those, just like he said, finding that why. I feel like the moment you figure out what their motivation is, if they have any, that's going to give you all the power you need to start extracting those little corners out of them to proceed with that objection. Because you think about it, nobody really wants to be sold on anything, but they have a reason behind, you know, needing money or and a specific need, and it's really just about locating that need. And everyone has one. You know, if someone comes to my front door and offers me something, you know, throws a pitch, just like you said, not selling just like a salesman. You know, no one wants to really hear a pitch if you sound like a robot on the phone or something. You know, getting personable, you know, relating to that client any way that you can. It's going to make a huge difference. But really the biggest thing, I think, on objection handling is just get in the game, you know, get in there, start making an experience and putting yourself out there.
And then you had talked about saying like you followed it up with somebody for like 6 months, right? And so how do you know when it's just like, well, I'm guessing you kind of feel it, but how do you know when you're like if you're being too consistent on something, knowing like, all right, these person might not, you know, rock with me, or might not, I don't want to, you know, they might not just want to deal with you. So how do you know if you're being too consistent? Is there such thing as being too consistent?
So, you know, for example, like if a new lead comes in, us personally, you know, we like to try to touch on those people for at least 14 days. And, you know, if we're not hearing anything back, at least 14 days of reaching out, sending text, just letting them know like, hey, I'm here to help. If you don't need my help, all right, but the last thing I want to do is not be there if you needed me. You know what I mean? And sometimes people have busy schedules. Sometimes during the day when I call them, they're busy. So, you know, if it doesn't work in the morning, that next day maybe try afternoon. If not afternoon, try that evening. Shoot a text. Some people don't even want to talk on the phone with you.
Right.
But, you know, usually after a certain amount of time, you're going to start. And also, like, even when you start speaking to people that you are nurturing, some people that I keep up with, I just closed a deal. I've worked with this lady for a year straight. You know, just slowly over time, taking care of them, answering questions for them, guiding them to their next steps. But you'll slowly, like I said, just being involved and getting more, you know, helping other people. You're going to start realizing those that are going to be making moves and who's not, just by conversation. And so I feel like that too is going to save people a lot of time, at least for myself, because when I first started, I was trying to talk to everybody as much as I could, just wasting all my time with some people who were never going to buy anything. Right. And so I started picking up on those little nuances that gave me signs. Yeah. So, I'll put them on a watch where like I have an automated email that I reach out to them, once a month. Hey, if you need anything, I'm here. I'm not going to bother you. But
right. Yeah. Is there any such thing as in like the field that you're in, is there any such thing as being too consistent?
I would say that for like a general advice, no. There's no such thing as being too consistent. But there is an art in like striking while the iron's hot. Right. Because like knowing when that person their motivation is at the highest or their interest is at the highest, that can take you a long way. As far as just being like overly too consistent, if you're a bother to them or if they express that they don't want you to follow up as consistent as you've been, then that's when you need to dial back. But for me, in my experience, a lot of people respect the consistency. And I feel like more people respect the consistency than people who dislike it. So although they may be like, wow, this guy hits me up like every other day, but okay, if I do end up selling, it is going to be him, as opposed to you just trying to do guesswork as far as when should I hit him up? Should I wait a week? Should I wait a little bit? You're better off just getting your consistent self going. Pick the schedule yourself, whether it's daily, if the motivation is like medium to hot. Scale it back if the motivation is low. Like if somebody tells me they're not going to sell for 3 months, I don't have the time in my day to be texting and calling that person every day, right? Right. They're not ready to sell. Right. But if somebody tells me, I've been thinking about it, I think I'm ready, I'm going to call you every day until you tell me yes or no. So there's a gauge as far as kind of the degree of the lead and of the situation, but I don't think there's anything. You can't ever be too consistent unless the person expresses, like tries to push you away a little bit. Right. That's when you just dial back. And then
sometimes they just need that push.
Yeah. Right. Even with that, like if the person pushes me away, I do give them that like immediate space. I'll give them the moment that we agreed on. But if I don't hear back, I'm following up again. Right. Like I know you said you didn't need me to follow up with you for a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure. Right. The worst thing they could do is tell you, never call me again. And that's never really happened to me. The only things that's ever really happened is someone may be like, look, man, you've called me every week for the past 4 months. I'm just not ready. And then they usually end up saying, this is the day you need to call me. Right. And you only get that because you followed up so consistently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then have you ever had one of those that you're just like, oh, I followed up for so long, but then they're just like, nah, still.
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
All the time. Right. I follow up with people for so long, but then I've gotten like
really good deals off of that.
I've gotten, I've gotten like some of my biggest deals from just being consistent over months and months. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just building that relationship with people for a long time.
Okay.
That's all it is. Build a relationship. They like to call it just panning for gold. You're always got to be in that river panning for gold, man. The moment you get out of there, you're going to stop, getting those gold nuggets. And I think it's just all about, being there. You're going through a lot of rubbish. But that one gold nugget makes it all worth it.
Okay. So that makes sense. So I'll get back into, the aspect of, structuring your deals. Okay. So I'll get into the closing part since I had somebody ask me that. So we have double closing, we have joint ventures, and what do we have? What's the last one, Dame? We have double closings.
Like wholesale?
Yes.
Okay.
Double closings, joint ventures, and then I'm missing one. But we can just talk about how double closings and like joint ventures and when you actually need them.
Okay, so for double closing,
I'm gonna look that up.
I think you will start to need them more now, but essentially you either have a lot of money or you take out a short-term hard money loan. Mm-hmm. The hard money loan has a high interest rate, right? Because it's only supposed to be money that's lended out for usually a year or less. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even less than that, 6 months. Sometimes people get hard money loans for the day. That's technically a double close, but it can extend up to as long as you need it. But essentially double close is you borrow money. Like I said, it's very high interest rate, but it's because you have so much space and profit. You borrow the money, you close on the house, and you turn around and sell it immediately. You may already have, most of the times you're going to want to already have the seller, the person that you're selling it to. So like, again, you're not having that money lended out for long. The rates can vary. And then I think like a joint venture is more so, I mean, that's kind of a general term, but it's essentially just partnering with someone on a deal like that.
Close, but it's still, that's not really a close. It's just like,
it's just a partnership.
Way to structure a deal.
Yeah, it's just like Garrett knows the seller, but I know a buyer. So we're going to joint venture on a deal. He's going to talk to the seller. I'm going to talk to the buyer. We're going to sandwich together. And then the other form maybe of a joint venture is kind of like if I hit back on the hard money lending or the loans in real estate, you could actually like have somewhat of a joint venture with a lender, whether it's like an institution, a corporation, a bank, or if it's just like an individual who's a lender. You may say, Garrett may have $1 million in his pocket, and he may say, hey, I want to do a joint venture with you. Go out, find us some houses. We're going to flip them with my $1 million. That's our joint venture. It's my money. It's your work. That's the JV agreement, and then we'll split the profit. So that's also another form of a joint venture.
And so those hard money loans, does the interest go up if you have them for more than a year? Okay, all right. Let me see how I wanted to structure that question, because it was something about that I wanted to touch on. So that interest, I wanted to touch on how that interest works. So if you have it, because usually when you're looking to wholesale or something, you probably want to have it for like at least like a month, like, or less, right?
The contract or the loan?
The loan out.
So if you're wholesaling, you don't need to take out a hard money loan most of the time.
Yeah.
Wholesaling is essentially you already have the buyer before the closing date. So you just collect the fee or the difference between the original contract and the new buyer's contract. You're just in the middle, and you collect that amount at the closing date. So basically, the buyer that you assign the contract to or wholesaled the contract to, he'll bring his money to the closing date, to the closing table, as they call it. But that's old school. You don't have to be there. He'll bring his money. He'll wire it in on the day of closing. The title company or the closing attorney will give the seller their portion of the money, and then they'll say, okay, there's $10,000 left. That's yours. That's an assignment fee or, a wholesale fee.
Right.
So you don't need a hard money loan for that. The only time you need a hard money loan, well, there's more than one time, but the times you need a hard money loan are if you have to close on the property first before you can sell it to the next person. There's a lot of reasons for that. Or if you need it, if you can't sell it to the buyer on the same day, there's like a lot of reasons for that, whether they can't buy it that day, maybe they're out of state, like different stuff like that. And then another reason is if you're making a large sum of money and you don't want both parties to know how much you're making, then you would want to take out a hard money loan, go ahead and close on the property with the first person, and then you have possession of it, whether it's for an hour, a day, a year. Then you close on it with the second person and you sell it. That's a big reason. That's probably one of the main reasons that anybody who does like as is flips or wholesales, that's one of the main reasons they use hard money lenders, is because they don't want each party to know exactly what the price is on the other end.
Because they could probably look at it and say, "Whoa, you're getting too much off of me," or something like that.
Yeah, they'll either say, "I don't like how much money you're making," or they'll just be uncomfortable with the fact that you're giving the property away from somebody else, right? Like in our business, there is a lot of like trust and just like not like beyond relationship building, but just the fact that like people like simplicity, right? So if I approach you and say, hey, I'm going to buy your house, and then I decide to wholesale it or assign it away, you were comfortable with me buying it, but now you see I'm giving it away and you're like, what's going on here? I don't know about that. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. That's fine. I'll close on the property with you with a hard money lender. That's the end of it for you. You won't hear anything else. Then I might turn around and sell it to another buyer and you won't be involved.
Right.
But when it comes to a wholesale or an assignment, all three parties are pretty much involved at the same time.
Oh, assignment. Okay, bad. And then all right, I'm going to ask you about this technique again. So if I have a property on an LLC, obtained by a realtor, can I sell that LLC with the property? Is that a way to get around like, because you can't assign the property if you're working with a realtor, right?
You can.
You can?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so what am I thinking of? I can't do something with working with like a realtor.
So that's actually like it's a misunderstanding in wholesales and like real estate. You can assign properties that or contracts that you've gotten through realtors as long as it's in the contract.
Okay.
Now there are a lot of, especially we're in North Carolina. Anybody who's watching, there's a lot of like the basic North Carolina typical contracts that realtors use that have a clause in it that say you can't assign it.
Yeah.
So if your contract says that, or if you don't negotiate for that, everything's negotiable. If you don't negotiate for that to be taken out, then that would be an instance where you either A, can't assign it, or B, you can by just using a hard money lender. Mm-hmm. So that would be an instance like if the realtor and the seller were just 100% no assignments at all, but it's still a good deal, then you'd bring in a hard money lender. You'd look at the realtor and say, no problem, I'll close on the property myself. And you'd close on it with a hard money loan, and then you've already have your buyer that you're selling it to ready to go.
Have you ever dealt with that?
Yeah, they make it aware in the MLS that it's an assignment contract.
Yeah.
When you're looking at that property, they will have it in the description for agent remarks. This is an assignment contract, and make it aware so people do know that when they're going into it, which is nothing wrong with it. You're still getting the deal. If numbers make sense, then it's not a problem at all.
Right.
Just understand that it's an assignment contract.
Yeah.
You're not buying it directly from this one person.
Right.
So.
And that's what I meant. The assignment clause, not the actual realtor itself. The assignment clause. So if it does have an assignment clause, say I have an LLC, right, and I have the property signed to the LLC, couldn't I just sell the LLC with the property to get around the assignment clause? Get what I'm saying?
I do, and you could, but of course that would be
just more work.
I wouldn't even say more work. You just want to make sure you do it right. I'm not the best with like accounting or anything as far as like LLCs and business structure and stuff like that, but that would lean more into that, and you would have to make sure that you do it right, so that the property and only the property comes with the LLC, and you get all the rights to the property in case you were to ever go to sell the property outside of the LLC. Then you wouldn't want to run into any issues. So that would be more like a business structure. I'm not like, of course I'm not like the most in tune with all that, but it can be done, and I have heard it being done.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard of it being done for sure.
Okay. I didn't know if it was something in that you could do, or if it was like kind of like a tricky situation. But I'm gonna skip over to this. In this real estate age, how has the digital age kind of affected the market? Like, how do you feel as far as social media and everything being digital now? Like, you don't really have to be at, like you said, don't have to really be at the closing tables now. Has that really like affected real estate as a whole?
You mean more like technology being involved in what it is? This is that's the era we're in. Buyers and sellers are more educated than they've ever been. It's changed everything for sales, in car sales and real estate. You go from where they relied on door to door, going out and meeting that person, and it changes everything. You got to think buyers now can look up and learn anything. And so, when you're meeting with these people, especially the millennial age, that they are just as educated as you are for the most part. They'll know what's going on. They're not lacking a lot of knowledge. And also sellers are doing all their own research online. And so I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think you just had to adapt for those that came from the era without the technology. It's been a huge change up for them. But people like myself at my age, I grew into it, so I don't know any other way. But I don't think it's been a bad thing. I think it's been the best thing that could ever happen to sales. It's exploded everything into diversity of being able to get your hands on so much. It made a big difference.
And so, how does the market look right now, just like right now versus the past, like? As far as buyers and buying and selling right now, how does the market look right now in North Carolina in general?
Market's hot. We're in the hottest market we've ever seen before. There is such a huge lack of inventory. There is a very low supply that where buyers are looking for homes, and it's so hard to supply that demand right now. It's sellers are benefiting majorly from a lot of equity they're getting out of this, but a lot of people still want to sell, but some people that want to sell, they don't know where to go. They're going to be joining the buyers group that are out here, fighting this war, trying to get into their houses that they're buying. Man, it's the hottest market we've ever seen.
Is there anything that's changing on your side as well? Is there anything different?
The market's definitely hot. Some people call it a seller's market just because they have somewhat still of an advantage. But like he said, a lot of sellers do becoming buyers, so it does kind of even out essentially. But North Carolina in general, it's growing so fast. So many neighborhoods, so many cities, towns that are growing. It just makes our market like definitely top tier when it comes to turnover. So whether you're buying or selling, like there's a lot going on. It's not a stagnant market at all. It's definitely like a revolving door in every way. For me, it makes more activity available because if it was a slower market or if there was less turnaround, then that would mean that there was less development, less flips, just people staying in place for longer periods of time. So it would be a slower game. It would be more of a long-term game. Mm-hmm. We of course, there's always space for the long-term, but we have space for the quick turnaround as well, which does help investors, does help guys like me when we're looking to flip or when we're looking to make shorter-term investments. Not every market calls for that. So,
right. And so, being that the market is booming, and then we have we have Apple coming to the Triangle in Raleigh. What does that actually mean for the market? I know that's high, but is that like a good thing for somebody that's trying to wholesale a property, or somebody that's looking to buy? Is this a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, just piggyback on what he said. There's so much growth going on. I mean, you got to think even like Rock Hill, for instance, has the Panthers headquarters that's coming out. I mean, growth is good. I mean, change is good. Growth is good. Values are going to continue rising. It's not looking like any shortage of this slowing down anytime soon. And a lot of that, like I said, does come with the amount of people that are pouring into the Carolinas. A lot of people are directly coming to Charlotte, being such the biggest main central of the Carolinas. I think a lot of people are seeing how you're in Charlotte. You got to think that you're 3 hours from the beach, you're about 2 hours from the mountains, the country's in your back door. You've got the main city. So you've got people from the west, north, all of them coming down south. And so there's just a lot of growth coming to here in this area. So all the change that's coming is great. It's going to be great for the values, for more jobs, more opportunities. There's nothing really to complain about there, I don't think.
Do you think, other than the busy traffic, people coming down from all over I joke with people from New York all the time. They just can't freaking drive they can't drive at all. But like people from all over coming around, that is a good thing for the market though. But that helps, right? I mean, just people just wanting to come here. Yeah. That helps the market as well. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would say it definitely does help the values, but it doesn't help the local man who wants to take advantage of being where he's from. You know what I mean? Because unless you can act just as quick as the growth, and not everyone could do that. So let's just say someone's sitting at home and they're like, I want to buy a house in Raleigh. I've lived here, or Charlotte. I've lived here my whole life. But by the time I can afford to buy a house now, the houses will be worth double this because people from New York and everywhere else keep moving here. So it's it is good for the market if you have the chance to take advantage of it quickly. But if you don't get a chance to get in, you'll end up not benefiting from the growth, and you'll end up having to be on the back end trying to hope that there's more growth later. So you see a lot of local people who really have a bad taste in their mouth about the growth and about people moving here all the time. And it's because they're not in a position to take advantage of it now. You'd have to be in that position in order for it to be good for you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's good for the market in general, but it's not good for individuals unless they're in a position where they can set themselves up now. You got to be ahead of the curve. You have to buy a house now let people move to North Carolina for the next 10 years, and then you'll benefit from it. You know what I mean? You can't live here the whole 10 years and then try to buy a house later and hope that you'll benefit from it. It doesn't, there's a divide there.
It's a bigger gamble if you do that than anything. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And so I'm gonna get into these fan questions real quick, and these actually were some good fan questions that people really they watched the last podcast and they really enjoyed, y'all, and they wanted your input on it. So first,
appreciate y'all.
I wanted to ask, should I sell my current property before buying a new one?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, you got to ask the question is, can you buy another house with your current property under your name? You know what I mean?
Right.
Are you able to qualify for not making your house contingent on the sale? And it answers that entire question. If you can buy another house without selling your house, it's going to make it a lot easier on you. I'm not saying that it can't be done. We're doing it every single day. But if you have to sell your house to buy a house, then you get to completely strategize based on having to do that. And so, I mean, yeah, it depends on how long you've had that house. I'm sure they probably got great equity in it. They're probably really tempted to do so. But just understand, if it's a must-have right now, understand you're jumping back in that buyer pool. What's your next steps?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. How many houses should I view before purchasing one?
I've had clients fall in love with the very first house that they've seen. I've had clients that has took 25 plus homes to see the one they want. And so I don't, I think it really, I tell every client, guys, I'll show you one, I'll show you 1,000. When you walk into the house that you want, you're going to feel it. Right. I actually had a client today that was, we walked into a property. We've seen 3 so far together. And her husband wasn't present. She called him and told him that she liked it. He said, go ahead and place a bid. I was like, you like it? Do you love it? And she's like, well, this thing, and I know he's going to not like this, but, at least it's better than nothing. And I'm like, okay, 6 months from now, if you close on this house, I don't want you to come up to me saying, I should have got this. I settled, So you're going to know if you love the house. And I even tell our buyers, yeah, it's a crazy market, but don't feel like you have to settle. You know what I mean? You're going to get a house. I think really, if you're patient and persistent and staying at it, you're going to find the house you love and you're going to get it. And forbid it, a lot of times right now, people are falling in love with a house and make an offer and they lose it. It breaks their hearts. Guess what? There's always another house.
Right.
You'll love another one. I promise.
Exactly. And when do you see this real estate boom end?
So this is a good topic. We're hearing this. Everybody's saying it's a bubble that we're in right now, and a lot of people are questioning, is this bubble going to burst? And I think we have to really just look back on history as to why these words have been stuck to us. We look back in the early 2000s when we had that crash, and it kind of trained people's minds into hearing crash. Seeing this same kind of trend going on, but if you look back at just the facts, a lot of evidence proves that this is not a housing market bubble. It's not really looking like there's going to be a crash or some kind of burst where prices just start crashing down and everybody's going to be able to buy a house again. Believe it or not, now more than ever, in double decades, housing is more affordable than it's ever been. It really is. Even despite the spikes in prices that we're seeing, there's never been rates so low. They are still under 3%.
Oh, wow.
My current property I bought back in I built it 4 years, brand new construction. It was a first-time home buyer loan. I have a 4.75 interest rate. That was at $229,000. Mortgage is $1,500. That same rates right now, I could buy a $350,000 house.
Oh wow!
If I were to be able to get the rate that I have at this very second. I'm sorry, the rates that they're providing right now. But the thing about how much money is being, left on the table, you've got a lot of people saying, well, I'm going to wait for this to crash and then buy. Well, say it does crash. You understand that rates are going to completely change. It's almost like you're stepping over dollars to save dimes at that point. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of longevity equity there to be looking at. I don't think it's worth waiting. If you want to buy. I tell everybody it's not a bad time to buy. It's just a hard time to buy, and that's okay. But you're looking back on history where into early 2000s, what really caused that crash, and you start off with, the foundations of loans, how that was structured. I mean, you got to think at that point, there were so many undocumented loans. not providing proof of income. I mean, people could get loans so easy. And that all defaulted back on them. And lenders and major corporations with home loans have had to be forced to adapt to new lending statuses. I mean, it's nowhere in comparison now. So the foundation has been completely rebuilt on that lending aspect to where buyers are qualified that are buying homes. And so it doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. I think rather than a bubble burst, we're going to be seeing more of hopefully at some point it catches up. And when it does, I'm going to be so happy my income's going to double. I'm going to be able to get so many more buyers into homes.
Right.
But I don't really see this being like a crash.
Okay. So then I have a couple of investor questions as well. What marketing campaigns are best for new investors?
Well, to me, the best marketing campaigns for new investors are the cheapest. When you're a new investor, you're still trying to figure out what works for you and what works for the market that you're in. So I've seen guys with a lot of money who have money like sources outside of real estate, and they think, okay, well, I'm just going to do what I think is the hottest or the best, and they just come in and maybe the most expensive marketing piece, but they got the money to spend, and they're very, very green and very new, so they just come in spending money, and they end up blowing a lot of money and not getting a lot of properties or deals. So to me, the best campaigns for new investors are the cheapest. So that's just the basic networking. That's maybe texting campaigns and calling campaigns if you have time. Mailing is not too expensive if you do have some money. And then after that, everything else like PPC and Google ads and stuff, those are the more expensive ones. So I would say just the basics like networking. Maybe if you can afford to text campaign or to call campaign, do some calling, those would be the best for someone new.
And another one would be, how do I start finding leads for my first deal?
That's a very general question, but I mean, I get what they're going. To find leads, you need to find a lead source. So you need to figure out what your budget is. I encourage a lot of people to start on websites like PropStream, Realtor.com, Zillow, kinda. But on a lot of these sites, you can either find like expired listings, which is somewhat of a motivated person. If they tried to list it with a realtor, but it didn't work out, either they listed it too high or the house maybe just needed work and no one was willing to pay what they were asking. Different situations like that. You'll also be able to find, especially on PropStream, you'll be able to filter the addresses by the years that they've been owned, or the equity that's been built in the house. All that's available on some of these websites, specifically PropStream. There's a couple others, but that's just one that I know everyone can afford. It's like $100 a month. But so you'll want to probably use these cheaper options in order to start putting together and acquiring leads, because you have to get a good stream of leads in order to find deals, right? Mm-hmm. People think that you could just wake up and be like, okay, I want to get a house, and then the lead or the deal will fall in your lap. That can happen, but it's not as common. So you want to get a willing turn of leads in, and the deals will just start to accumulate from there. The other option is to spend, I would say, if you have a budget, a couple hundred to a couple thousand low, 1 or 2, 3 at the most, you could start to pay for some form of a campaign, like I had mentioned before, which is a text campaign, or like a cold calling campaign. So in a text campaign, you would start off, send out maybe a couple hundred texts a day. First, you have to buy the list. Then you have to skip trace it. Skip tracing, if anybody doesn't know, that's like paying for the person's contact information. So essentially, like most people's contact information is available online if you pay for it. It's like a background check. Mm-hmm. So you buy a list of addresses, and you get them skip traced, which means you just basically pay. I don't know if we covered this last time. Mm-mm. All right. Well, let me slow down then. You buy the list of addresses. Say, I want every address in this neighborhood. I buy the list, and then I pay to get it skip traced. The skip trace is going to come back and give me all the possible phone numbers for the address for that owner. And then you either text or call those possible numbers for that address. Text, you say, hey, this is Mike. I just wanted to know if you still own that house, or hey, are you ever thought about selling that house? They may respond or they may not.
And then you can go from there. You can ask them, are you thinking about selling it? Have you ever? Then you can take the lead from there. Same thing with calling. After it's been skip traced, you want to get on the phone. Most people hate it, but it is the cheapest. And, well, actually, like, texting is a lot more efficient if you don't have time. But cold calling is more massive. Like, I feel like you do get more conversations going a lot of times. But you just get on the phone and you say, hey, my name is Mike. I just wanted to know if you still own that house or if you ever thought about selling it. And then you just do that over and over again until someone says, yeah, I own it. And yeah, I thought about selling it. And then you structure the deal from there. So that's the best ways to go. But you just got to get you got to get a revolving door of leads in order to ever get a deal.
Get motivated.
Yeah.
Make some phone calls. Knock on some doors.
Knock on the doors too.
Door knocking too.
That's the thing too.
Called driving for dollars.
Driving for dollars.
Yeah,
I
know driving for dollars, but I didn't know. I thought you just obtained the addresses and then do your own research.
Do you follow Thatch on Instagram? He's a major flipper, wholesaler,
Who?
burr investor. Thatch.
I do. Yeah.
He posted something today, and it was like knocking on 100 doors a day until you become a billionaire. And it was just like,
he's not doing that. I don't believe it.
Hey, the conversation was simple though. He said, you're literally just asking these people, have you thought about selling your house? Well, I mean, out of how many people are you going to ask that question? One's going to say yes. I mean, just get motivated. Pick up the phone.
Pick up
Get
the
out
phone.
there.
I'm more of a phone guy. I'll get on the phone.
Yeah.
But
love conversation.
Yeah. But when it comes to, there is like, we should touch maybe on door knocking and then driving for dollars. Like you can definitely, so driving for dollars, you get in your car, you drive around to these neighborhoods that look like they're developing, right? Maybe there's already some flips in that area. You see construction in that area, whatever. And you drive around, you look for the houses in the worst condition because those are the ones that haven't been touched yet. Those are the ones that need work. Or they maybe look abandoned. They just look like it could be a deal, like it would be a good investment property, right? You don't want to go for the houses that look good. And you don't want to drive around looking for the houses that are already for sale, listed with a realtor. That's not going to be the best investment most times. So you compile a list of the houses that you see when you drive around, and then you got to go home and you got to skip trace it. You can skip trace it for free. There are like truepeoplesearch.com or like spokio.com. It's pretty cheap. It's not free though, but it is cheap. And then you could do the same thing that I said. Instead of paying someone else, you could do it yourself, skip trace them, find the contact information for the owner, and give them a call and do the same thing. Or you can start off with a text. Say the same thing. Hey, I saw this house. Is it yours? Are you doing anything with it? You can keep it real simple. There are good scripts if you're going to do it at a mass level. There's scripts that are involved. And then there's we can get into, there's block words and words that'll get your phone number flagged if you send out too many of the same words. Like you can't. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can't like send out 1,000 messages that say, hey, I'm an investor. Like your phone numbers will get flagged and stuff like that. So there's keywords and stuff that if you're doing it on a mass level, but if you're just starting off your cell phone, you won't have to worry about that too much. Okay. The phone number is registered in your name. It's probably been there for years. Right. So it's not something you got to worry about. But yeah, it's basically driving for dollars. You go out, find the houses, get them down, skip trace them, and then call the person. Now I've seen people just strictly do driving for dollars. That's all they do. They don't do any type of campaigning. Me personally, I don't like driving that much. I do like driving, but I don't like driving that much, especially in neighborhoods. So I'm not going to do that. I have tried it, and I have gotten plenty of leads, but I never actually closed a deal driving for dollars. But I mentored a couple of other people, showed them how to drive for dollars, and they closed deals. And I was like, wow, you guys do it better than me. It's a timing thing as well as a consistency thing. Every time I did it, I lacked the consistency. I'd be like, I don't feel like driving today. Like, I'm too lazy. But the people who consistently drive and consistently compile that list in different neighborhoods across the city, they'll close the deal. Timing-wise, I don't like to give timing, but I've seen people start driving today, maybe within their first 30 days of driving, which is not, that's not long at all, but it is longer than most people are willing to do. Within like their first 30 days, they've talked to a couple sellers, and maybe if they're good enough, they've gotten a contract, right? So that's not long, but I've also seen people who drive for a couple months and never end up getting a contract. So
there's something about that consistency, though, that you're thinking about. Help. Like when you're talking about the whole lead sources things, I think like a lot of people they put money into something, they expect it to work so fast, And, just like you said, it might take someone months and they don't get anything, but you don't know really the results of something if you're not consistent with it. And so I feel like a lot of people lose out by, trying this just for such a short amount of time. Oh, it's not working. Move on to the next thing. Cold calling. They tried for 30 days, didn't work. I feel like if you stick to something long enough, it's gonna start paying off.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
exactly.
A huge part of success in real estate is consistency. That's the part that no one likes, because even when you get bored, you still gotta be consistent. You still gotta suit up and show up.
Yeah, that's not the pretty part of real estate.
It's really
not at all.
And I went through a period of time already within the year, where I'll have a whole 2 weeks of just whatever it is, just weighing down on you. And you don't want to get up. You're not as motivated that week, man. But it's Stephen will always say, just suit up, show up, something magic happens all the time. Something about just dressing up, getting in the office, being there, being present. It just clicks on a light that I'm here and I'm here to do this, regardless of your mood.
That makes sense.
I mean, just like you in MMA, if I'm sure there's so many days, man, you get the fight coming up that you don't want to be in there, but you show up, and y'all call it all the time the trenches. Yeah. You're in the trenches, and I'm sure it feels like that sometimes, but that's what pays off.
Yeah, it's terrible. Sometimes you just I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like getting punched in the face today. I just don't. I don't know if you've ever felt like that before. I'm just I don't feel like getting punched in the face today.
I missed it so much, man. I went back this past week, and man, Frankie, shout out to Frankie, man, dropped me in the cage. I was like, man, something about this I really missed. But man, I'm back. This is rough.
Yeah, bro. It's just something about that, though, bro. But I thank you guys for coming on. Maybe we can get a part 3 going on sometime. We got Damian being a doctor somewhere, just trying to save some lives, and then
doing it all.
My man Garrett over here about to cop these awards. I know you about to get the awards, bro. So I'm not even tripping about it. But go ahead, shout out y'all social media for everybody.
You can follow me at Garrett Smalls with a Z on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook, Garrett Small. That's it. I don't do anything else. Facebook, Instagram. You can catch me on Twitter.
Instagram, DNA_Dame, DNA_DAME. Just stick to Instagram.
Right? Stick to the Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean Facebook too. But
just stick to the Instagram. Then you can follow this. You can follow us at Push Fed Podcast on Instagram. And if you're listening to this, you subscribe to the YouTube. And if you're watching this, subscribe to all the audio stream platforms. Push Fed Podcast. We out.
We out.